All right, Sean, this week, let's talk about, do our feelings belong in our retirement strategy or our retirement plan? I don't know how you can say they won't. Do they? We'll find out. We'll get into that conversation with you, but I think they're gonna, because we're emotional creatures no matter how you slice it. So how you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Doing pretty good. We're laughing because we were trying to tape this and it wasn't taping very well. So we're this is take two of this conversation. But hey, look, most people think it's like, what you do is all calculators and spreadsheets, and it's definitely a lot of that, right? But you got to take some of the emotional stuff into account when dealing with retirement. So let's tackle a couple of the big dogs this week and just kind of talk about them a little bit. I'm going to shake up the order just because are doing this again, just so we can keep you on your toes. But let's start with the nitty gritty versus the 10,000 foot view, right? Because you deal with a wide spectrum of people, and
Sure.
some people want to know how to take a car engine apart and put it back together again, and some just want to know where to put the gas in the thing and drive it, right? So how do you work your way through that stuff?
Yeah, don't tell me about the labor, just show me the baby kind of mentality, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So to give you a little bit of my background, my undergraduate degree's in corporate analytics. So I can get as nitty gritty as people want.
Okay.
My master's is in financial planning, so then it's the simplicity side. Personally, from an emotional perspective, I like to have the data on the back end for a plan, but keep it simple. The reason that I do that is that it's much more emotionally easier to handle a plan and understand a plan if you just look at the basics. Okay, here's what I've got. Here's where the income's going to come from. Here's how it's going to work. And that at the end of the day, that's what people want to know. How is my plan going to work, rather than how are we going to get there with all the facts and analytics and data and analysis and Monte Carlo and assumptions and all that stuff? Tell me my plan is going to work and then show me how.
And the implementation, I imagine, will be easier for most people when it is simple to understand, right?
Exactly.
Because we're doing it. We're doing the work as the end user, right? As the client. So, how am I going to be set me up for success versus, hey, look at how neat this is. I don't understand it, but woohoo, kind of thing, right?
Well, and advisors tend to get so detail oriented, they lose people they lose focus because they're using jargon that is advisor speak, or they're using terminology, or they're getting really detailed with spreadsheets and stuff like that. At the end of the day, what's my problem? It's income. How am I going to solve that problem? With the assets that I have or the income sources, and does my plan work? Yes. Okay, perfect. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Let's carry along.
Yeah, and I'll tick off the few viewers that we have here and there that say stop talking about baseball, but I'm going to do it anyway because that makes sense as to why you love baseball, because you can get really analytical with that game. I can't get into that. That doesn't work for me. I'm a bit more of a football guy or hockey. Now, you can get into the weeds with any sport, but obviously baseball is known for having the really deep level of analytics if you really want to get down into the weeds. And thinking about that, the other night at the time we're taping this, I had just turned on the game of the World Series in the sixth on game one when the Blue Jays went off. And I'm sure there was some sort of analytic breakdown with the bases loaded, two balls and one strike for the batter. There may have been an analytic telling him what to do, but it didn't matter when he swung for it and hit a grand slam, because the emotional reaction, of everybody in the audience was in the stadium was like off the charts, right? So how do you view things, right? That's that same kind of conversation.
Well, in the analytic, now you open a can of worms with the analytics of baseball, because baseball analyzes everything.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What your batting average is with 0-0 count, 1-0 count, 2-0 count, 3-0 count, 1-1, 1-2,
right?
2-2, 3-2. What's your batting average?
Right.
But at the end of baseball is really simple. It's an individual game where you do your job and then you pass it off to your teammate.
Right.
You throw ball, catch ball, hit ball. That's it.
That's it.
If you can do those three things, you're going to play for a long time. But there's so much behind it, right?
Yeah,
So you want to keep baseball simple, throw it, catch it, hit it.
There you go. Right. Or you can get into the weeds. Same exact thing that, we're talking about here. So again, feelings are going to take, a big factor into that. Let's talk about market volatility, right? Obviously that's going to be a huge factor piece for many people. This year has been indicative of that, early in the year, late in the year. At the time we're talking, we're setting all new S&P 500 highs right this second while we're chatting.
Mid-April, down 17 and 20% between the S&P and NASDAQ.
Yeah.
Now it's up, 17 or whatever.
Yeah.
Depending on the day.
Year to date, yeah.
I know how you're going to feel if the year ends like this. We're going to feel good.
Sure.
The market, I made money. My accounts got bigger. I'm happy. I know how you're going to feel there. What we're more interested in, though, is how did your portfolio react and how did you feel in mid-April when the market's at double-digit losses? Because that, in a lot of cases, is more important and more indicative of how you're going to react.
Yeah.
If we do see a kind of a longer correction where the markets are down for a year or two.
Yeah. Can you handle that longer downturn, right?
Yeah. And can your plan handle it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Because if you're 65, and that bothered the bejeepus out of you in April, we need to change the risk tolerance a bit, right? We need to take a look at that conversation a little bit. Maybe it's time to reanalyze that. Maybe how you felt about things 2 years ago is not how you feel about them now.
Or put assets into focus. It's like right now, I'm a big velocity of money guy, and this is a kind of a term that my partner and I have put together, and we like to couple dividend producing assets with individual growth stock. The reason that we do that is that the dividends, it makes it look like those dividends make it look like contributions for you. So if I can create a strategy to where your portfolio is 50% dividend producing, 50% individual stock, well, all the dividends that come in over the course of the year, say that you get, $25,000 a year of dividends, half of that money goes to more dividend producing, half of it goes to buying individual stock. So now we're buying up more shares as we go without having to contribute any of your own money. We're just using the dividends to do it. And so if markets correct a little bit like they did in April, it's really opportunistic for us. Gotcha. Right?
Yeah.
And then towards the end of the year, the plan just looks that much better by just using the investments that you currently have to create more opportunity for you.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Right. And so again, we're talking about how feelings play into it, or do they belong in your financial plan? And again, they're going to be there. So we got to take them into account. So I'll combine legacy with where you're going to live. We'll just kind of combine these two, Sean, here. How do you feel about it? Right. Because oftentimes, moms, the ladies, in our lives, they feel a certain way about leaving something to kids and grandkids, maybe a little different than the dads do. I joke all the time, I'm leaving my kid a credit card statement, and the wife's like, no, but so, you got to take that into account, because you may be polar opposites in how you feel about legacy, and you got to have to find some common ground here.
Yeah. And this is a conversation that my wife and I have, all the time about our kids. But in a lot of cases, what I see historically is that we, as parents, and this is the broad, society as a whole, from the people that I talk to, right? We feel that our job is to make our kids' lives better than ours were.
Sure. I think that's fundamentally how we all view it. Yeah.
Create more opportunity for our kids, whether it's school or whether it's, an asset, accounts that get them started in life, whether it's inheritance when we pass. But there's philosophies there that compete too. It's, I'm just going to leave whatever's left. Well, that's one philosophy, and that's fine. Or I want to earmark a certain amount of money for my kids when I die, so we're going to change our retirement. But now we're starting to see a more emotional philosophy, and I really like. There's a book called Die with Zero. I really like these philosophies because it's more emotionally based, and it says, hey, I'm going to go ahead, and there's mathematical periods of time where my kids will benefit the most from money from me. And it's usually the late 20s, early 30s. Okay. And so this whole idea is, well, I'm going to give inheritance now to help with their lives to get them over that hump. Because then, I'm 45. Inheritance for me is going to mean way less now than it did when I was 25, than it would have when I was 25.
But there's the emotional conversation of, can you handle it at 25 versus 45? And that's going to be kid specific, human to human, right? Yeah.
Right. So, but to get me started in life, I could have used whatever
Sure.
inheritance would have come to me later on.
Sure.
Now, to this point, if there's an inheritance that comes, it's probably going to skip a generation and go to my kids to help prepare them, because they will be at that phase of their life where it will be really helpful for them to get a large chunk of money.
Yeah. Yeah. And I said I was going to combine these two. So the legacy conversation for, the retiree or pre-retiree, where you live factors into that emotional conversation piece as well. A friend of mine has one grandchild. Well, she's now finding out that she's got two more coming. And now she's rethinking that maybe I want to go live closer to all three of them versus not, where she currently is not, right? That changes things. So you got to factor that in.
Cost of living in different places, state taxes, which we've talked about. But being close to your kids and your grandkids is one side of it, but also there's this middle generation where now we've got aging parents that may need help. And so that keeps you, in our case, it keeps us kind of closer, right? So we don't have the freedom to move and go exactly where we want. Both of our kids are still at home. They're still, under our house. But at some point, we're going to have both sides of the spectrum where we're going to be caught where we want to go, and wherever our kids move, if they move out of state or out of town or whatever, we want to be close to them and their kids. But we've also got to make sure we take care of the dynamic of an aging parent as well.
Yeah.
In the event that we have to be here for that.
Well, and you and I were briefly talking about, but where you want to live from a state standpoint. Also, again, sharing that or talking with your advisor could make a difference in how you strategize. We think about the income, the state income tax. If you go someplace warmer, for example, and if somebody goes, well, let's go to Florida, but it's like, well, okay, but let's look at the plan, because you could maybe totally drastically change some things.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you go from a state that's got 7% state tax to a state that has 0. I mean, if you're making $100,000, that's a $7,000 a year raise.
Right. Right.
Now you have to look at property taxes and, sales taxes and things like that. But that's a big deal.
Yeah. Cause you were just working with somebody and ran into that, right?
Yeah. We were able to save them almost $90,000 in capital gains, state tax, just by them moving states.
That's not chump change.
No, that's a big deal.
That's a big deal. Yeah, exactly. So again, your emotions are going to factor in a lot of different ways, right? Where you live, the nitty gritty, I will do one final one, I guess, right? To be debt free or to not be debt free, to get all Shakespearean, that is the question, right?
Right.
Some people can't handle it. Some people are fine with it.
Yeah, I don't care. It's, I've got my mortgage. I've got my car payment. As long as my income is to the point to where I can take care of it all and I don't have to worry and I can still live the same lifestyle that I become accustomed to, cool.
Yeah.
I don't care if my debt's paid off. Some people are like, I cannot do that. I've got to have the freedom of owning the home and owning the car. And then all that means I have less income that I have to create each month because my home is paid off and I have no car payment. But now I've got to save up for some of those larger purchases. If I need to buy a new car, I need to save for that.
Well, again, how does it factor in? Does it factor in? Some people are very emotionally charged. Some aren't as much. So, advisors typically have to wear multiple hats. So make sure you're sharing how you feel truly about things, not just the X's and O's, because again, it is more than just calculators and spreadsheets. So if you need some help, reach out to Sean and the team, get yourself on the calendar, have a conversation about how your feelings will factor into your plan. And we'll have links in the show descriptions below so that you can get some time onto the calendar. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast as well on Apple, Spotify, and of course here on YouTube. And with that, we'll see you next time here on Retirement Elevated with Sean Lee. Thank you, my friend.
Hey, thanks. We'll talk to you soon.
This podcast has been prepared for educational and marketing purposes only. The information in this video is general in nature, does not constitute personalized investment advice, and does not provide a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. All investments involve risk, and different types of investments involve varying degrees of risk. There can be no assurance that any specific investment strategy will be profitable or suitable to you. Additionally, although information presented in this podcast is believed to be factual and up to date, we do not guarantee its accuracy. You should consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation and should consult a professional advisor before implementing any of the strategies mentioned in this video. Investment advisory services are offered through Elevated Capital Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor affiliated with Elevated Retirement Group LLC. Registration as an investment advisor does not constitute an endorsement of Elevated Capital Advisors LLC by securities regulators, nor does it indicate that the firm has attained a particular level of skill or ability. Insurance advice and products may be offered by a third-party insurance producer, which may be affiliated with Elevated Retirement Group LLC and Elevated Capital Advisors LLC. Walter Storholt, Mark Killian, and Third Wheel Media LLC are not clients of Elevated Capital Advisors. They receive cash compensation for their assistance in preparing and hosting this podcast, and for providing the endorsement contained in this podcast. Because Walter, Mark, and Third Wheel Media are compensated in connection with this podcast, they have a material conflict of interest in providing their endorsement.